Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers of Alpha, we are excited. We are just a few days away from one of the most important elections ever. I'm Joe Paul, the Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer of the greatest fraternity in the whole wide world, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'm here to introduce our webinar for this evening, the importance of voting, a college brothers conversation. We're going to be discussing ways to make excellence in leadership part of the voting process. But first, we have a very special guest that I'd like to bring up right now. I'd like to bring up our guest right now. Where is he? Where is he? Where's our good brother? There he is. There he is. Folks, I want to introduce you to Brother Amos Jackson. He is one of our stars. Brother Jackson is a former student body president at Howard University. He came through in the great beta chapter at Howard University. He's also the deputy political director to Senator Kamala Harris. Anytime you see the senator, you see our good brother, Brother Jackson. Brother Jackson, we're so glad to see you tonight, brother.
Thank you, Brother Paul. I really appreciate you for having me here this evening. First to General President Everett Ward and the entire General Board, to the AVPs, and particularly the Eastern Regional Vice President, Travis Nelson, for personally inviting me tonight. I want to thank you for having me tonight. And I have to shout out my home team, the beta chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated at Howard University. I am so thankful for the opportunity to be here tonight. For almost 114 years, our fraternity has led the efforts when it comes to civil rights and fighting for civil rights for Black people in this country. And in 2020, we need to be at the forefront again. As we know, a voteless people is a hopeless people. So I just wanted to thank you all for having this very important conversation this evening. We are 5 days away from the most consequential election of our lifetimes. And it's going to be up to Black men across the country, and particularly in our battleground states, to make the decision about how we want to move forward as a country. I mean, we can't do it without y'all. So when you compare everything, I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you that make sure that you make your vote and your voice count in these next 5 days, and take your friends, take your coworkers, take your frat brothers, take your sorority friends, and everybody included to the polls over these next 5 days. Stroll to the polls, do what you have to do to make sure that your voice is heard in this election. I'm so honored to be on staff with our AKA sister and Howard alumna, Senator Kamala Harris, and she sends greetings. This evening we just hosted our big D9 mobilization event this evening. We had over 30,000 people registered for the event, and for the first time in a presidential administration, the Biden-Harris administration has dedicated and committed to having a seat at the table for the Divine Nine and our White House outreach efforts. And so you are not going to be alone in this fight. And so make sure that you make your voice heard on November 3rd. And thank you so much for having me this evening.
Bro Jackson, again, it's on behalf of the fraternity, continue to represent A5, my brother. We appreciate everything that you're doing, brother.
Thank you so much.
Onward and upward, brother.
Bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers of Alpha, that was Brother Amos Jackson III. Coming up next, we want to bring up our moderator, who's going to be introducing our AVPs who are in attendance, as well as our panel. We have Brother Dr. Jason E. Shelton. I want to tell you a little bit about our brother, and there's so much to tell you because he is well accomplished. He's the Associate Professor of Sociology and Director of the Center of African American Studies at the University of Texas at Arlington. His research interests concern the sociology of religion, as well as the intersections of race, class, and attitudes about various political and social issues in contemporary America. Dr. Shelton's articles have appeared in Social Science Quarterly, Dubois Review, shout out to our fraternity brother, W.E.B. Dubois, Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion, Sociological Perspectives, Journal of African American Studies, American Behavioral Scientists. Our brother is well published. Dr. Shelton currently serves as the chair of the Arlington Unity Council, a major initiative sponsored by the Office of the Mayor that aims to study equity strategies that the city could implement to promote and encourage greater equality, and report to the City Council on its findings and recommendations. He's been interviewed by major media outlets, so we're extremely happy to have him. New York Times, Chicago Tribune, USA Today, NPR, British Broadcasting Company, Christianity Today, Houston Chronicle. Do we need to go on, my brothers? He earned his PhD and master's degrees in sociology from the University of Miami in Florida, and his bachelor's in sociology from Kent State. From 2006 to 2008, Dr. Shelton served as the postdoctoral fellow in sociology at Rice University, where he worked on the first wave of the Portraits of American Life study. Brother Dr. Jason E. Shelton, we are so glad that you're joining us for this conversation, my brother.
Well, it is an honor and a privilege to be here tonight, Brother Paul. I want to thank you for the invitation. Thank Brother General President Ward. It's just an honor to be in the house. Give a shout out to my brothers at New Pi Lambda chapter right here in the great city of Arlington, Texas. Frat brothers back down in Miami, Beta Beta Lambda chapter, Eta Delta chapter, brothers back home in Cleveland. We could go on and on, but let's get busy, Frat. I enjoy being here. I want to introduce our AVPs who are going to say a word quick this evening. Brother Travis Nelson of the Eastern region, Brother AJ Rucker of the Midwest region, Brother Kingsley Nwakwori of the Southern region, and Christian Coleman of the Southwest region. You brothers have your time. Appreciate you, and here you go.
Thank you, good brother. My brothers, good evening. My name is Brother AJ Rucker. And I'm humbled to serve Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated as Midwestern Regional Assistant Vice President. In this conversation about the importance of voting during one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes, it is quite an honor to have it. It is a necessary good in the world to do so. As such, women's reproductive rights are on the ballot. LGBTQ rights are on the ballot. Civil rights and liberties of our people as Black people are on the ballot. The sanctity of our institutions are on the ballot. Brothers, 4 years ago, I turned 18 on November 8th. That was election day in 2016. And I held the incredible honor of being a first-time voter in what we then should have called one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes. 4 years later now, we are proven that we could not have been more wrong, and that now seeing the degradation of our institutions, we see just how weak they are and how subject to evil they can be by those who abuse them. My brothers, here in 2020, members of the community, here in 2020, we hold an opportunity to use our vote as our voice, to cast a referendum on the democracy that we have been presented with. Brothers, I'm asking that you show up on November 3rd and every day leading up to it. Vote early, vote by mail, vote absentee, vote in person, vota, vote like your lives depend on it, because they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frat. Let's have Brother Nelson go next. Brother Nelson.
Brother Dr. Shelton, I know I'm not Brother Nelson, but what I wanted to do is give all the assistant regional vice presidents a special shout out. Brother AJ Rucker, who represents the Midwestern region, basically set the stage for all the AVPs. And so we're going to pitch it right back to you and get the conversation started. The people are waiting, my brother. Let's get it started, my brother.
Let's get it going then, Frat. Want to introduce Brother Bruce Wilson and Brother Kevin Jones, who are key brothers that will be on our panel tonight. I want to give you brothers a few minutes to introduce yourselves and take a little bit of time to tell us your credentials and expertise. I know Brother Wilson on the Board of Trustees at Hampton, Brother Jones of the management firm, KJ. Please take the floor and tell us a bit more about yourselves that you want us to know.
Most definitely. Thank you, Brother Dr. Shelton, for bringing me in. I was glad to be here to be engaged in such a meaningful conversation. Brother AVP Rucker, spoke about how this is a consequential election, but, I'm a graduating senior at Hampton University, originally from the South Side of Chicago, currently spending my time in the DC area. As you said, Brother Shelton, I currently serve on the Board of Trustees for Hampton University. So I'm in a fairly unique position, being able to see some institutional organizational changes during this health pandemic. Also, I'm glad to be a White House HBCU fellow. So that is actually the, highest academic achievement that an HBCU student can get from the White House and Department of Education. Also an Institute Alum Scholar for the Institute for Responsible Citizenship. And I most recently, onboarded myself as a venture partner for Next Gen Venture Capital, which is a venture capital firm focused on impactful and intentional investing. So those are my credentials. Actually, today, in light of this conversation, I was also recently featured in a CNN article about my voter engagement and how I am, making waves, trying to make sure that the youth stays involved and make sure we get out in large numbers to have some meaningful change in this upcoming election.
Wonderful, Fred. Sounds like you're doing great work. The future is bright, not only in the fraternity, but for you individually, sir. Keep up this great work, Brother Wilson. Brother Gibson.
You all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. My name is Victor Gibson II. I serve as the Director of Educational Activities for the Zeta Pi chapter at the University of Georgia. And so currently a cellular biology major here at the University of Georgia. And so my chapter recently, just in holding up our national programs, we've been doing some things like helping provide rides to the polls, also just doing some volunteering, trying to help people stay in line at the voting. And that's just what we're doing. Hope that everybody's doing well. Make sure that y'all get out and vote. This is very important for us. So thank you.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Brother Jones.
How you all doing today? Brother Kevin Jones from Pi Phi Chapter 419 Initiate. I'm a political science major, graduating senior, studying political science and police and investigative studies. I am the founder and CEO of KJ Management Firm, which focuses on personal and professional development. I'm also the vice president for the Central Ohio Young Black Democrats. And so I'm really excited about this conversation that we'll have here tonight. A lot of voter engagement amongst young folks, and it's really got me pumped. So I'm ready to dive in to talk.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's hop on in then. I see, oh, wait, okay. Brother Lusencourt, let's go, sir. Introduce yourself, Frat.
Am I next, brothers?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Just wanted to double check. So good evening, brothers. I first and foremost want to thank the whole entire fraternity leadership for putting this event, especially the AVPs. This is definitely something that's very timely, and I'm proud that our organization is leading the forefront when it comes to voting and making an impact for this election. My name is Brother Francis Lusencourt. I'm a Spring 2018 initiate by way of Untitled Chapter. I graduated recently from the City College of New York as a Macaulay Honors student, magna cum laude, where I studied political science with a minor in legal studies and public policy. While I was at City College, I was the president of the Undergraduate Student Government, and I also served as the vice chair for legislative affairs. So I was the principal spokesperson and legislative head for the University of New York, representing over 500,000 students. Currently, I am a litigation paralegal at Paul Weiss, a corporate law firm in Midtown, New York City, and I'm also a founder of a youth justice student-led coalition called Strategy for Black Lives. And we do a lot of civic engagement, policy work, and on-the-ground demonstrations around implementing equitable solutions for the improvement of Black lives. I'm also a founding member of an education nonprofit called Integrate NYC, which focuses a lot on education policy and integrating New York City public schools. I'm also appointed to my local community board here in Brooklyn, and I'm also an elected member of the Kings County Democratic Committee. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, Frat. Again, all you brothers are doing great work. The future is bright, not only in Alpha, but in your own individual lives. Love seeing this. Want to give the floor to Brother Nelson to say a quick word about what he's up to as well, Frat.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Brother Shelton, for moderating this event. It really is an awesome opportunity that we have before us. Again, my name is Brother Travis Nelson. I am the 60th Eastern Region Assistant Vice President. It is my pleasure to greet you all on behalf of myself and my Vice President, Brother Lucian J. Metellus, and of course, our General President, Everett B. Ward. This conversation is critically important. We have about less than 4 days left to get out the vote and make sure that our communities, our country, our people are in a much better position for the next 4 years than they have been in the last 4 years and the last couple of decades, if we're being honest with ourselves. So, brothers, I look forward to hearing this conversation. I know we have an all-star cast ahead of us, so I can't wait to hear what they all have to say. And again, thank you all for joining us. A voteless people is a hopeless people. We cannot afford to be a hopeless people. 06, bros. Hold the light high.
That's right. That's right. Appreciate that. So, brothers, let's hop on in and let's get it started. A number of you frats have already talked about the consequences and the importance of this election. But what does it mean to you personally? What is it about for you personally that resonates right now at this time in our nation and for this election? What is it that grabs your attention? Brother Wilson, how do you feel about, why don't you hop in and tell us what grabs your attention right now about this election, sir?
Thank you, brother. What the immediate thing I think about when I think about this election that's coming up actually isn't the candidate or the parties themselves, but actually the most recent Supreme Court judicial nomination. That's something that, I immediately think about, and that's a reminder. And it's inspiration. I feel like it should serve as motivation for everybody when we think about the future and the narrative that we're writing for this country. We have to have people playing their part, getting into these positions in these federal district, municipal level courtships, so we can instill change on, all of these levels. This election is huge and it's going to be monumental, but I always like to remind people that, the energy that you're feeling right now for this election, like, be thoughtful and know that the election, when you go and put in your vote, that's just, the first step of your political participation. This is like a 24/7, 365-day thing that we have to be a part of. We just can't show up on November 3rd and then forget about everything we did before.
That's right.
Because when we forget, we're going to have more Supreme Court nominations like the ones we just seen. So that's what I think about. Like, I think about the urgency of now, as our, good brother King, Dr. King once told us, like, it's the urgency of now that I'm thinking about.
Fabulous. Brother Jones, I see you shaking your head like you're agreeing a lot. Tell us, what is it that resonates with you in this election, Pratt?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brother Wilson, the nomination for the Supreme Court is just very imperative. And even if we looking at, just circuit court judges as well, like he mentioned, not talking about candidates specifically all the time, but just, the works that's happened over the past 4 years. What's more important to me is some of the little things that tend to come out during, the campaign and process. When the current administration released, their goals for the Black American community, they talked about $500 billion worth of capital funds that they had locked up that they're going to finally release. And this is the same president who only won 8% of the Black votes. And so for me, it's important because if a president or a person in general can seamlessly, carelessly, and confidently, lock up $500 billion of, funds for a community to thrive, for a community to be successful and, to actually give back to that community, then this person or the next person does not deserve to lead and is not fit to lead. So this election is important to me because, we see the work that's done and we more importantly see the work that isn't done.
Wonderful, wonderful. Brother Lusencourt, tell us, what is it that grabs your attention and what is motivating you about this election, sir?
Absolutely. So I definitely do echo the sentiments that Brother Wilson brought up in regards to the court system, especially someone that does want to go to law school and has a lot of background with criminal justice organizing. But another issue that I would like to highlight would be Medicare, healthcare, and education. A lot of communities, especially communities of color and poor communities, really do suffer when it comes to meeting the basic needs of educating their child and the ability to take care of their loved ones if they become ill. So we're looking at a systematic attack on the Affordable Care Act over the last 4 years. And not only has this administration done that from the executive branch, they now are in a position to even do further damage from the judicial branch as well. So we need to find a way to make sure that we protect that, fight for policies like Medicare for all, so that we have the opportunity for Black communities to have the resources in order to protect our loved ones, especially amidst a global pandemic that only exacerbated the pre-existing issues when it comes to healthcare. And the same thing happens with education. The leadership of the education department under the current administration's appointments is very lackluster. They're doing a lot of focus on school choice and not investing in public schools. Public schools are the schools that are supposed to be given the right and robust education for our communities. I have an education background, and we need to understand that our communities and our neighborhoods need to have schools that are funded, resourced, and that's from the federal level down.
Fabulous, sir. Brother Gibson, round us out, sir, with what is it that resonates with you in this particular election right now, sir?
Yeah, so I think that my fraternity brothers have said a lot of great, interesting things. I think that one thing that's important for us as college brothers, as younger men, to understand is that this is, for some of us, this is the first time that we're able to vote in a presidential election. I know that for me personally, that's the case. And I think that it's definitely big on us to be able to use that platform, to help our friends get out and vote. I'm saying? This is a very important time, and it's important. We need to get out there. We need to do what we can to show to the polls whatever we have to do.
Wonderful, wonderful. By the way, let me just say, I wanted each one of you brothers to answer the first question, but following this, we don't have to, this could be a round robin thing. Just throw me that A5 and let me know that you want to hop in on a particular question. All right, brothers? So let's move into talking about age. As you all know, you've heard it your whole lives that young people do not engage in the political process in the United States of America. But that generally speaking, as we get older, and the research is very clear on this, as we get older, people vote far more often because we're more invested and have more to gain or more to lose. But the data is also fascinating in that for this particular election, for example, in the state of Texas, where I live, the number of first-time voters is up significantly as compared to previous elections. And so I'm curious to know, what do you all think that is? What is it about young people, millennials right now, that are so motivated to get involved in this particular election?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to go first on this one? All right, Brother Jones, I saw you throw it up.
Yeah, so I believe that, millennials and Gen Z, I think that we're voting because we see the turmoil that's happening in the world around us. Since 2016, there's been constant racial unjust, economic crash, and at this current state, rampant pandemic that's happening. And so, aside from that, we also have, very lack of confidence in current government. We see our nation being put on a pedestal of embarrassment day in and day out. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to change the dynamic. Gen Z and millennials have always been shakers and movers. And so, we have came to the conclusion that another way for us to get in the room, to sit at the table, to make these different changes is by voting. And so I believe that, if we don't vote, those individuals feel like, not only have they failed their community, they failed their self, but that they're doing an injustice to all of those around them. And so I think that, I think we're excited. I think that we see room for change and growth, and that's what we're about. That's what all of us young folks are about: shaking and moving, making something happen for not just the betterment of our lives, but the betterment of the future of those.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Who else? What brothers want to hop in on this in terms of age and what's going on with your generation is so motivated right now? Brother Lusencourt, hop in there on that and tell us what's going on with you young people and why you're so motivated, sir.
Absolutely, brother. I think what's happening is we're going to see a current increasing trend of involvement when it comes to Gen Z, especially because of the activation that happened in the 2016 election cycle. When it came to the Democratic primary, a lot of young folks were more interested in the political cycle. And when the current president won his election, that only added fuel to the rage of young people who have to inherit this country. What a lot of us in our communities and our age demographic is understanding that the judges that are being appointed, they're going to be sitting in that seat for our lifetime. The environmental crisis and the lack of listening to the scientists, those crises are going to affect our futures and our families' futures. So what we're doing is we're taking ownership of issues that are going to affect us, because if we sit by complacent, we're not going to be able to address things until they're too late. So I'm actually expecting a continued positive increase. And I'm also very, very proud and excited to see that, because as we saw with the George Floyd situation over the summer, we're seeing an activation of a lot of folks, young folks, 18, 19, 20 years old, some who haven't even voted yet, that are taking an interest in politics. So whether it's organizing, pushing for voter engagement, this is something that we really need to see and capitalize as we move forward, not only for this election, but elections beyond.
Fabulous, fabulous. Brother Wilson and Brother Gibson, I want you gentlemen to hop in on this, but I want to preface this question a little bit. 4 years ago, I walked into my introduction to sociology class and I asked them, I said, who do you think is going to win this election? It was between Trump and Clinton. And a lot of my African-American students said that they were very upset. They were going to vote for Hillary, but they said that they were not excited to vote for her because they were voting for Bernie Sanders. And I thought it was really interesting that they went on to talk about how they liked Bernie Sanders, but their moms and dads and grandmas liked Hillary. And what I would like you two brothers to speak to is the generational differences among, I think, younger people. You millennials, you all see things a little bit differently than the baby boomers and even us Generation Xers. So I'm curious to know, can you brothers speak to the generational differences in Black America and maybe why you all might like certain candidates more than others? Brother Wilson or Brother Gibson, Brother Jones and Losing Court, y'all can jump in on this as well, but I would like to get those brothers in on this first.
Most definitely. Thank you for, that question, brother. I think in a snippet to answer that, the real reason is that, older Black people have been traumatized more severely. You've been hurt, way harsher than, the young brothers on this panel have. Hopefully we don't have to endure the same trials and tribulations that, the people whose shoulders we stand on had to endure. But I think that's the truth of the matter. It's, we are still hopeful. We are energetic. We want the most progressive legislation and the most progressive representatives because we see a brighter future for this country. Some people call it optimism. Some people, call it a naivete, but it's something that, I'm not willing to shy away from right now because it is, the youth who really take heed of these movements. Even if you look at it from a historical lens, it was the youth who stood in the front lines and who got up every day and who were taking part and who were leading these movements. It was the youth. Even the Bible says it, a little child shall lead them. And so I think it is a normalcy that we see, across the Black diaspora, especially the divide between, the boomers, the millennials, Gen Z. But the truth of the matter is that we are still hopeful. We think we have a chance to change and reimagine the structure of this country. And so that's why, we get really excited over a, AOC or Bernie Sanders, someone of the like.
Right.
Because, they're closer to us and they also make us, feel like that we can be them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Brother Gibson, what do you think about this, sir? About this generational divide within Black America and who we like and who we maybe are less interested in terms of supporting?
Yeah, I think that Brother Wilson definitely really covered it. I mean, like I was saying earlier, this is a new generation, that we're saying we're coming up now, we're about to be professionals, and this is a time to try to make that difference that we want to see and that we want our kids want to be able to see as well. So just being involved and doing what we can now to hopefully, get that change started. We may or may not be able to see it in our life. Just the possibility that there's someone that's progressive, there's somebody that's wanting stuff for the youth, being put in place, and that's something that's going to really attract us and get us out to vote for them. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Brother Jones, Brother Losing Court, you can jump in on this one or not. It's up to you all. I got another set of questions we can roll with as well. But let me also say this, though. I think it's really important for the brothers that are out there listening and for anyone who's out there listening is that Black America is at a major point of evolution. And that the young people in Black America not only see politics differently, they see certain aspects of race differently, they see certain aspects of religion differently. So I think the ground is moving in Black America in some very fundamental ways that some of us may like, some of us may dislike. But I want those other folks on the call to realize that during the 1960s, y'all were the young folk, and that was the same argument as well, that the ground was moving underneath your feet. And so there's these fundamental changes that are happening, and you brothers are the generation that's leading that. Who knows where we're going to end up 100 years from now? Good Lord, I probably won't be here, but if brothers like you are in front of this, then we are going to be in a very interesting and important place, and certainly not the same place ideologically, politically, even religiously than we are right now. Let me use that question to sort of move into another area that has popped up recently with popular culture and hip hop. I'm sure you fellas have seen Ice Cube and 50 Cent are becoming part of this popular argument about who Black folks should vote for and why. What do you all think about that? This role of the popular culture, rappers, actors, athletes, who should be able to speak for us as Black people in society, and why not?
So I don't mind taking this question. And I actually really, really like it, because before I hopped on this panel, I recently saw on Twitter that famous rapper Lil Wayne was actually met with, the current president about this platinum plan, or this plan for Black folks. And I think one thing that I kind of rubs me the wrong way personally is that I feel it's very disingenuous. And honestly, I would say it's disrespectful, because when do you see in other communities that the entertainers, and this is not to disrespect them or to belittle what they do, they all have a role in society, but when do you see the entertainers perceived and met with as the head of our community? It kind of builds on the negative stereotype that young Black men face when we're younger, is that, oh, our options are either a basketball player or a rapper. Is that our only way for relevancy? Right? We have a lot of incredible educated Black folks in the movement. We have an educated, powerful Black woman like Stacey Abrams, like Ayanna Presley. Why are they not in these conversations? They study this. They know the strategy. They're in the political field. But for some reason, whenever it comes to plans for Black people, those people aren't in the conversation. So I think it's a form of a microaggression. I think we need to be really conscious of how we're being perceived as a community, and making sure that our community and our leaders are respected, because those are just performative to me in hindsight.
Appreciate that answer, Fred. Brother Jones, what do you think about this and the role of media and personalities who are essentially anointed leaders in the Black community?
So I actually like this question as well. And when I was reading this question, it kind of brought up some history with these two individuals as it pertains to politically, and I think that my good brother had summed up, really well the perspective and encompassed everything. But I think that, it's not surprising for me, not at all, because this is the same individual when asked about Kanye in 2018. This is the same individual that says, I'm not meeting with Trump, He probably already knows what's going on. I wouldn't want to waste my time. The lack of empathy and the lack of authenticity is very present with this entire situation. Even with the Kanye situation, him running for president, it's just a diversion, because we all know that a vote for Kanye is not a vote for, anyone. It in fact is a vote for Trump. And now everyone has their own perspective and political party and candidate who they can vote for. But when we want to talk about, Kanye's campaign, his perspective of, oh, I'm not voting for Trump, I don't support him anymore, when in actuality, it's just a diversion to get him more votes. So I think it's a hoax, it's a joke. And I don't think, and this is what's most pleasing about this situation, I don't think that anyone, especially millennials and Gen Z, has been diverted from the true cause, from the true purpose and the vision and the end goal. I think that it even infuriated us more and brought us to a deeper desire and passion to get it done.
Wow, I think that's a very powerful point, Frat. I definitely agree with you that folk in Black America, as much as I'm going to speak up for the old school heads, anybody who was around in 1988 knows every word of Ice Cube's first album with NWA, right? So he going to get a little bit of a pass for us from a point. We were all shocked and dismayed, though. But I understand that point there. It didn't change people's perspectives in terms of how they were going to vote. We didn't fall for this okie doke. Brother Wilson, do you have any take on this role of Black celebrities and their position, good, bad, and ugly, in Black America as spokespersons for us?
Yes, most definitely. And it's such a relevant, topic and subject to talk about, because we see it, and I think Brother Lusencourt touched on it very well, that, it is a major microaggression. And I think it's almost hysterical, the fact that these Black bodies, these Black men specifically for the most part, are being used as puppets. And to a sense, it's like, I don't even think they realize it. You know, these people probably think they have the best intentions. They're going out there and being a spokesperson for these communities. And, you know, I always try to have I take everything with a grain of salt, because we look at, you know, the celebrities on the lines of Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, Jeezy, but the conversation kind of shifts a little bit when you talk about the celebrity of LeBron James and the initiatives that he's taking, because people see the genuine spirit of it in the field. And you know that a man like him is trying to do something actually to excel and accelerate, you know, us collectively. And it's a totally different sentiment when you see it from Ice Cube meeting with President Trump and so on and so forth. And I really think that we should, you know, divert to what our good brother W.E.B. Du Bois said in, you know, his famous book, The Scholar Denied, that we should follow the academics. We should follow the scholars. And those are the people who should be speaking for us, because I even read something recently. It's like, just because you make $1 million, that does not make you an economist. You know, right. You do not have a PhD in econ. You can, yes, you know, you're a great entrepreneur, but you do not understand fiscal and monetary policy. And so you should not be meeting with the White House to speak on, you know, the Black economic landscape. And so we really have to follow the scholars when it comes to this, because, you know, the other side of the world, the other America, has been very strategic and intentional about who they put forward to speak for them, so they can, you know, draw their red lines and make sure that they have everything in place. And that's the strategy that we need to take.
Wonderful, wonderful, brothers. I thought that was dropped lots of wisdom and knowledge right there, gentlemen. Let me move the conversation another direction. And of course, with all of these questions, there are no right or wrong answers. But in your opinion, what do you think are top priorities that we as Black people need to be focused on, not just with this election, but of course, this election is why we're having this conversation. But what are some of the top things that we need to focus on, generally speaking, in 2020 and beyond? Brother Lusencourt, what do you think, sir? Where we need to go here right now to focus on?
No problem. So I will definitely say, I'll echo the sentiments when I answered the first question. We definitely need to get focused on education. I feel like education is something that really is a vehicle for our community. And I'm not saying that every person has to go through the traditional 4-year of college or 2-year of college. We can get technical degrees. We can do vocational learning. However, I just believe that we need education as a tool that can help us improve as a community, because that ties into the second thing that I think we really need to get focused on, is economics. I definitely understand that we have a lot of political policies that need to get passed in terms of equality and justice. However, we need to fight simultaneously for economic independence as well, because this country is a capitalist country, and this country responds often to money. That's how we value as a society. So we need to make sure that we're pushing for economic justice, buying Black businesses, making sure that the dollar revolves around our community, and prioritizing that in order to make sure that we got us. No one can take care of us better than we have us. And then the last piece I would say is definitely criminal justice reform, because what we're seeing is our communities are being systemically targeted as a new form of slavery. It's literally modern day slavery. The text booklets that I used to answer essays when I was in college last semester were literally built by men that look like me and are probably the same age as me in state prisons. We have Black men all across this country being imprisoned off of racist and archaic laws from the state level and the federal level. And we need to make sure that we're coming up with a plan that not only addresses this, but specifically addresses recidivism, because we're having a pattern of where Black folks are continually having a revolving door between our community and the criminal justice system. We need policies that not will just deal with it at a surface level, but that are intentional, so that once someone leaves prison, they are better off. And education, economics, and criminal justice reform, that's all interconnected. The school to prison pipeline. One of the reasons why a lot of Black folks are even going to prison is because the lack of economic and educational resources. So if we can attack it with a multi-pronged approach simultaneously, we can definitely improve our communities in the long run and make them stronger.
Fabulous answer, Frat. Brother Jones, what do you think? What are some in your opinion, priorities that Black America needs to focus on in the near future, sir?
Definitely education, definitely justice reform. And I would say that my third piece is probably affordable housing. One thing that I can say about the city of Columbus, Ohio, where I'm at, we empower each other as it pertains to Black businesses, as it pertains to Black leaders, Black officials. And so, we have a unified sentiment around, what our agenda is in our communities as Black people. In 2016, the American Journal for Preventative Medicine said that, African-American males died almost 3 times higher than their counterparts. But they were 15% of the victims were unarmed. That means that we're not only dying at higher rates, but we're actually victims who cooperate more with our Justice Department to ensure that our life continues. But unfortunately, that 15% didn't make it.
Right.
And so, we also fail on getting opportunities. We're the underrepresented in the 15 top occupations, but overrepresented in the 15 worst occupations. That is truly detrimental to the success and building of Black wealth in our communities. Affordable housing, we don't understand, first off, the education behind real estate, but then 2, the education about building an authentic, real Black wealth. And so I think that when we get to a point where we can educate, get educated on real estate and get educated on affordable housing and what it really means to, build up a community of color and a community in general. And really heavy on that word community, because community is important. A lot of times we think that a neighborhood is a community. No, community is more in depth. It's about, relationship. It's about, resources, accessibility. And so we even know this from having conversations about community policing. And so I think that those are the top 3 things that any candidate, no matter what office you sit in, needs to focus on, especially the presidential candidate. And I go back to my comments about this current administration saying they're freeing up $500 billion of capital money that they had held for 4 years. And they expect us to believe that these next 4 years, that $500 billion is going to be put back into our Black communities.
Wonderful, wonderful. Brother Wilson, I want you to give the last take at this in terms of your opinions about what we need to be focusing on. But let me also, before you answer, Frat, let me let everybody out there know we'd love to take questions from you. I had a few that were scripted, but we would love to get you brothers involved in the conversation here. Please chat them, and we will try to include as many of them as we can. Looking forward to getting you folks involved in it. Brother Wilson, the floor is yours, Frat.
Thank you. This is a topic, what are the priorities of the Black agenda? I agree totally with everything Brother Luzencourt and Brother Jones mentioned. And it's so hard for me to really put, these in a prioritizing order, because essentially all of our problems have intersections. They all overlap. And so, I'll start with education. That is the first thing that we must do. Education is the supreme vehicle to uplifting ourselves. And then immediately following that, the thing that we really need to focus on and what will make education easier is bridging the racial wealth gap. That needs to be at the top of everyone's agenda. When I, look at candidates and screen them, the first thing I'm looking for is do you have any policy, anything on your agenda, any legislation here that is very much intentional, not just about, taking people out of poverty, but closing the racial wealth gap that exists, because that chasm is too big. You look at that disparity, and on average, white families have a wealth that is 7 times larger than Black families. That is abysmal. That is an egregious flaw and a negligence by the United States of America. And that's something that we have to collectively, chiming in on you, Brother Jones, with that community. We have to have a community effort to close that chasm, because it's too big, and one answer is not going to fix it. And then on top of that, we are in the midst of an uprise of what is the fourth industrial revolution. This technological sphere that is happening right now, along with the one thing that may be bigger than the racial wealth gap is the digital divide. We need to send Black and brown young men and ladies to the West Coast of Silicon Valley and get into these tech positions and start, tapping into some of these venture capital funds and these startup and entrepreneurial landscapes, because you have people, that's not oil and gas or, cotton and slave money. Those are networks that we can go into and, within 2-3 years be on boards and in C-suite level positions. So closing that digital divide is something that is very much essential. And then lastly, I'll say something I'll always look for is, who is talking about the health and wellness of Black people? Because, we know about the implicit bias that exists in these hospitals and how they are treating, our Black women and our sisters when they are going in for checkups and they aren't believing these symptoms. We have to get rid of the implicit and complicit bias. And I'll just call it what is the overt racism that exists in the, the health professional system. And specifically, we as Black men, as brothers of this fraternity, we have to make sure we are doing our best to uplift Black women, because if we're doing that, we will in turn be lifting up ourselves. Because I go back to you, Brother Jones, was like, we have to have a community effort to do this, because everything that I mentioned, everything that we mentioned, they all intersect. And so we have to rise together.
Wonderful. As a sociology professor, I love hearing that word intersectionality, because our problems is there's no one silver bullet that solves the issues facing Black America. There is the intersectionality of all those things. I also loved how you brothers mentioned the wealth gap. And please know that we all individually can help contribute to that. My beloved grandfather, Joe Bailey, who owned one of the oldest Black-owned businesses in the great city of Cleveland, Ohio, always told his grandboys to save some money and invest some money, right? He always told us put 12% away of every paycheck. And we did it. It was hard when we were young, but I'm telling y'all, do it sooner rather than later, and you'll have more. And we can individually, when you do more and I do more and they do more, we close that gap. We got to learn to save this money and make it work for us with that. Brother Benjamin Jackson has a great question that I want to toss out to you, brothers. And that is, how can we inspire other undergraduate chapters to speak out about issues raised today on their campuses? So how can we inspire other chapters? And also tell us what you are doing in your chapters. What's going on your yards, on your campuses, and how are you getting folks involved? And what do these other chapters need to do to follow the leads that you brothers your chapters are establishing? Brother Lusencourt, why don't you go first, Frat?
No problem. So I would definitely say, first and foremost, college brothers, across this fraternity are some really, really bright, intelligent young men that have a lot to say. And I believe that when provided with the necessary platform or the tools or resources, they will really demonstrate what it means to be a member of this fraternity. And when it comes to the current programs that are happening at undergraduate chapters, I think it's very important to understand what your campus needs, right? Each campus and each yard is different. I always say, if you want to be a very active college brother, you need to also be an active college student on your campus. When I was an undergraduate brother, this past semester, I recently just graduated, I was also involved in student government, right? I was in conversations. I was working with the Black Student Council. I was able to keep a finger on the pulse of what not only the campus community overall needed, but what the Black community of my alma mater, the City College of New York, needed, right? So that way we were able to tailor programs specifically to them. There was, for example, there were issues where Black women felt like they needed a space of their own, right? So we decided to host a natural hair and self-care workshop specifically around the disparities around colorism and Black women's hair. And that was very well receptive. And my chapter, ADA chapter, is also a Metro chapter, right? So my line brother, who's also the AVP, Brother Nelson, he also had a finger on what Columbia University needed and tailored programs accordingly based on the climate. So I think it's really important to invest in college brothers, provide them with a platform, especially if you're an alumni brother or the chapter advisor, and then encourage them to be active on campus outside of just a fraternity life so that they're able to be successful in both fraternal life and collegiate life. And to wrap it up, currently, my undergraduate chapter is actually doing a workshop right now on sexual consent, because that is also a very, very big topic that's timely. I mean, I know Brother Wilson, as the Chief of Staff for the Eastern Region, also recently did a workshop at our College Brothers Retreat. So that's definitely something that undergraduate chapters should be doing across this fraternity.
Wonderful. Brother Jones, why don't you tell us about what's going on with your chapter and what do we need to do to get more of these undergraduate chapters, more college brothers involved?
Yeah, so to get college chapters involved, one of my great, one of my favorite things to do is to, challenge college chapters. I had a conversation with a college brother, and he was just kind of talking about, how we can do more on his campus. They were dealing with, a racial issue. And, I had brought up, some of the brothers that were here before us who are no longer here with us. Brothers Dr. Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, W.E.B. Du Bois. All these great leaders before us had some form of influence on why we wanted to be a part of this great fraternity. Take the studies and the aspects that they've lived by and go out and do it. And, just like my good brother said, not every campus is the same.
That's right.
Every campus may experience the same issues, but the way that you handle it is definitely different. I know that at Wright State University in Fairborn, Ohio, I can't handle a racial issue the same way, let's say, Ohio State handles it or Central State handles it. So, you have to be able to modify your technique and, your approach on things to the environment that you're in. So that would be my point of advice. As it pertains to my chapter, we had a racial incident on campus. If you don't know, the region where we are located, less than 5 minutes away is where the murder of John Crawford happened. So, we're in an area where, our university is called Wright State, but it has a very racial nickname. And so, one thing that we've recently did was send a letter to our president and an open letter to our campus. We sent a letter to our governor demanding an removal and reappointment of trustee members to better reflect our campus community. And from that, we got a lot of great feedback. We've got a lot of noise started around campus, and a racial bias task force has been developed and working on some of those demands that we release. As it pertains to involvement around election, not just my chapter, but the entire District of Ohio, this weekend is going to have a Get Out to Vote rally for the first time of this magnitude that I'm actually really excited about. For college, not just chapters, but in collaboration with the NAACP units in the state, but to get college students out to vote and finally have this conversation and unified movement here in Columbus. So we're really excited about that. So we've been doing a lot of things around voting, around racial tension, and, kind of figuring out how to make not just our campus home a better place, but for those who are looking towards Wright State University, how to make it, a more welcoming place for them as well.
Wonderful. Brother Wilson, what do we need to do to get more of these get more college brothers active and get the attention of some of these chapters, Frat?
Most definitely. Thank you. First, let me applaud Brother Luzencourt and Brother Jones for, the great work that you are all doing, trying to make sure, our college chapters are engaged in your communities, are making sure that you have extreme political participation. But, what we need to do as Black men as a fraternity, and just general as citizens who want to see a better tomorrow, we really just have to remind ourselves that we aren't working for ourselves. This is not an individual goal that we have. Like, we should be working for, the man or the woman to the right or left of us. We have to think about the least of those and let that inspire us, let that move us forward. I know, the Gamma Iota chapter of Alpha Alpha Fraternity Incorporated on the campus of Hampton University, unfortunately, we are, virtual for our fall and spring semester. So what we typically did to engage the campus has changed, and we have had to, put our finger on the pulse and think about ways we can keep the campus engaged in light of this presidential election that's coming. And so we have tons of virtual programming. We, most recently, actually, tonight we'll be hosting, a session with young men and women on campus to remind them, about the importance, ask them about voter suppression or anything that could have possibly been happening, making sure they have those absentee ballots in. Once the presidential and vice presidential debates were going on, we hosted watch parties. And then as soon as the watch parties was over the next day, we had voter engagement and dialogue, trying to figure out, how do people feel? Like, how did that, debate, how did that topic make you feel? And so those are the ways we are trying to, in light of the fact that we will be virtual for the entire year. It takes a lot of creativity, a lot of digital infrastructure, but some of this is what Brother Lusencourt said, you have to know what your campus needs. And sometimes I know, we do a lot of events about political participation. I know the campus sometimes gets annoyed when they keep seeing our flyers about, did you vote? Are you doing this? So sometimes we may take a step back and we'll do, a mental health event, just check in and do a meditation session and make sure we have that holistic feel for everyone. Because we know not everyone is overly political, like some of us. And so some people are just now stepping in. Like Brother Jones said, this is the first election for a lot of people on college campuses. And so that's the way that we're approaching it.
That's fabulous. It sounds like you brothers are not only deeply involved, but your chapters are most certainly holding up the light and calling attention to these issues. We're almost done here, brothers. And I want to invite everybody to continue to type a few questions in here. We got about 10 minutes to go before we move on and bring Brother General President Ward to the table. So I got just a handful of questions. I would love to get some more in from the brothers out there. I saw good brother Carlton Washington is in the building, the new Pi Lambda. Give me a question, Frat, so I can put our chapter up on the spot, But anyway, I'd love to know how you brothers, Brother Wilson, Brother Jones, Brother Lusencourt, if you have not voted already, or if you have voted already, what are the things that you do to get prepared to make your choice? What are the things how do you get prepared to go into that booth or to send in your voter card? What are the things that you do? What are your process? What do you do to figure out before you go to the polls to be an educated voter?
Mm-hmm. I'll take that question first, brother, because I know I'm actually sitting here right next to what I just got in the mail today as my absentee ballot that I'm going to send back to the Chicago Board of Elections tomorrow.
Hey, brother, drive it in. Drive it in. It's too late now, homie. Drive it in. We don't trust that post office this close, homie.
Priority Express, brother. We'll make sure.
Yes, sir.
So, some of the steps I take, just to make sure I am, adjusted to everything that's going on. I go on the candidates' websites just to, give myself a clear mind, make sure I'm looking at all the correct things. I go and look at the policy that they have, look at their Black agenda or their lack thereof of a Black agenda. And, then I do what I do whenever I make a major decision. I get on my two knees and I pray. And I ask God for wisdom and strength to make sure that I'm making the right decision. And then after that, I'm going to, fill out this absentee ballot and priority express this bad boy back to Chicago so I can make sure I'm
Wonderful, Fred. Appreciate that. Brother Lusencourt, what do you do? What have you found yourself doing to get prepared for this election to be an educated voter?
Absolutely. So I definitely make sure I do my research. I follow races as early as I can. I was definitely a very involved early voter when last summer there was a Democratic primary debate. I was watching that, and also make sure to watch the debates from all parties as well. I watched the Republican primary debate as well, and I always love watching debates. It's one of my favorite ways to kind of see the temperament and personality of the candidate. However, when it comes to policy, I definitely look at their websites and compare the policies. And I also have conversations with the folks around me. I like to understand other perspectives, see where people are coming from. I always make sure to talk to someone that is older than me, because we have to understand that our ancestors and our elders have a lot of wisdom, and they've experienced things in this country that we have yet to experience as younger folks. So I make sure to have those type of regular conversations. And from there, I decided to make the decision. I plan on early voting tomorrow morning. So I definitely want to express having conversations, not just making a decision on impulse. Oftentimes people are voting without being informed. They don't really know the policies. You want to understand you're not just voting necessarily for a person or a party. You're voting for yourself. You're voting for your future. You're voting for your community. You're voting for housing. So that's definitely something I want to express with people as we head into the final days of early voting and election day this coming Tuesday.
Wonderful. Brother Jones, Please tell us, sir, how you get prepared to go into the booth or submit your voting ballot.
Yes, sir. So I'm thankful I had a mute button because I'm just over here. Right. Yes. So, so by the grace of Central High Young Black Democrats, I have an opportunity to be a part of conversations as these different political parties plan their campaigns to launch in the state of Ohio, specifically in Columbus and Franklin County. So being able to, speak with the teams directly, and although I don't get to speak with the candidates on presidential elections, I get to speak with their teams sometimes, me and my colleagues. So, I'm able to learn their policy in that aspect outside of doing personal research on the websites. As I gear up for, actually casting my ballot, my friends and I went to go early vote last week. So we, some of us was our first time voting. This was my second election voting. So we had an opportunity to, take a group of people with us to go vote, do the research, of course, on the policy, on the candidates, history of, what they stood for before they announced their presidential run and race, things that they did before they were candidates at all, whether they were just, a mayor, a congressman, a woman, or whatever. So doing, some background checks, I guess, so to speak, are things that I do. And so when it comes to, actually casting a ballot, as I mentioned, me and my friends, we got up and we do this every time that, we're able to vote on a presidential race. Get up, we go vote together, probably go grab some brunch afterwards for the household, my parents, especially because of the pandemic, who, can't go out and go vote in person. I make sure that they have their absentee ballots here and make sure I hand deliver it for them or get them sent out back in the mail. So.
Wonderful. I think, man, these are fabulous points. If there was one thing that I'd like everyone to know is that I voted 2 weeks ago, and my wife and I, we voted early. We voted in person. We did it at a time when we knew we were going to be a lot of people in there voting, but there were more people than we thought, which was the good news. But what we always do is we take our two daughters with us. And our two daughters, literally, I take one of them, I take the oldest, or my wife will take the youngest. My wife is an AKA, our soror. And our little girls literally hit the buttons for who to vote for. And it's always been that way. We are teaching them the legacy of voting now and the importance of it. They're going to grow up, already have been the person who casted a vote for their parents. And I want all of you all, whether it's you brothers on the panel or brothers out here listening tonight, take your kids to get them started voting young so it's just a part of their everyday life. We got two final questions left. I see Brother Vincent Adams is in the building. My man. All right, Fred, it's great to see you here. Two final questions here, brothers. And the first question is from Brother Cleveland Beckett. And Brother Beckett says, or is wondering, what have you found as the most significant impediment to engagement in civic participation beyond voting? So beyond voting, what have you found as the most significant impediment to engagement and civic participation beyond voting? Any of you brothers, who wants to take a stab at this first? Brother Jones, your mic is unmuted. I don't know if you meant to hop in, but I'm going to get you on the spot, Brad.
I appreciate it. I think that the biggest obstruction for people, wanting to get engaged and being a part of the civic process is first off purpose. They don't understand the purpose behind it. They don't understand their own value. And, being a part of this process, sometimes it's just people are trying to get by and they don't have anything else to focus on in life except for survival. And so I think that is an issue and is a big issue as we talk about things like voter suppression and oppression. And so I think that that's one piece of it. And then the next piece will obviously be passion, which is accompanied by the purpose, having a passion for the person that they're voting for. Do they truly believe in what this individual is saying and what their team is saying that they're going to do? Can they see themselves building a relationship with this person? Although you may not ever meet this person, do you feel like you have a special connection and are a part of something? And I think that is a big issue and a big conversation with people. They always feel like they need to be a part of something, which isn't a bad thing, because a president, especially of the United States, or any candidate representing any constituent body should allow their constituents to be a part of the process, to be a part of the decision making. And I know that I always want to feel like when I go speak to my mayor, if I go speak to my city council member or school board member, that, you know, it's an authentic and relative conversation, and they actually are hearing me out on what I'm saying.
Fabulous. Brother Wilson, why don't you hop in here, sir, and answer the question for Frat?
Most definitely. I think that Brother Jones, you know, touched on it perfectly, and I will say that it is, you know, purpose, or, you know, a lack thereof, better said. And I never fault or blame anyone for that lack of purpose, you know, to be engaged in the political process or to vote, because, you know, you can't ever blame anyone for how they feel about anything. I truly believe that. And especially you can't blame, you know, groups of people when they have no reason to believe in the government, in the political system. If they have, you know, maybe once participated in their history or have witnessed or heard wind of their grandparents, you know, going through voter suppression, their parents talking about how their vote didn't count. If you wake up every day and you see poverty, you know, that vote going to the polls is something that's the last thing you're thinking about. Right. And, you know, that is a huge impediment. That is something that is hindering, you know, Black people that look like us, because it's like, what is voting? You know, a vote for, you know, candidate A or candidate B is not going to help me feed, you know, the 3 kids that I have at home, or make sure that my child gets to the daycare. You know, in fact, you know, the way they set it up, they make it intentionally hard, where you almost have to be privileged to participate in the political process. And so that is the hugest, the largest impediment for sure.
Brother Wilson, Brother Lusencourt, I'm gonna get you in 1 second, Frat, and you can jump in on this too. But how would you all respond? You brothers have heard this before. There are Black folks that have said they were poor whether the president was a Democrat. They were poor whether the president was a Republican. Their lives haven't changed. Voting doesn't matter. How might you respond to that when that criticism is levied? Brother Lusencourt, you don't have to hop in on that right now. You can. I just wanted to toss that out there, but go on, Frat, and Brother Lusencourt. And what is it? What are some issues beyond this notion of impediments to civic participation beyond voting?
No problem. I'll speak on the previous question a little bit, then I'll get to the second question, because I really enjoyed that question. Wait, give me 1 second. The phone's ringing. I'm sorry.
Okay. Brother Wilson, why don't you go on and hop on and tell us about Brother Lusencourt, you back, Frat? All right.
Yes, perfect. So when it comes to impediments to civic engagement, in my opinion, I believe it's more so about the gap in education can be daunting. Right. And if you don't really understand the political process, my apologies.
Tell old girl to call you back later, Frat.
All right, give me 1 second. My apologies, brother.
Brother Wilson, why don't you hop in and tell us, how would you reply to that argument that my life hasn't changed regardless of who's president?
Yes, I'll definitely chime in on that. And, you know, the people that I have those conversations a lot, you know, that I was poor, whether I voted Republican or voted Democrat, and the same as vice versa. The people that are like, I'm going to be a millionaire, whether or not it's a Democrat or Republican in the office. And so the argument is the same from both these polar opposite ends of the spectrum, you know, and what I reply to those people is that, you know, it's not about voting. And similar to something I said when we first started this conversation, is that voting is just you know, turning the key, opening the door to civic engagement, to political participation that exists. It is not the work that you have to do. And so I respond to those people, you know, by saying that if you don't want to vote, that is, you know, your own due diligence and calling that you get to decide on. And so what you should do instead is find a way that you can make impact that you will be able to see. What is some viable and tangible steps that you can take, whether that be, you know, working with the local nonprofit or starting your own organization or tutoring children, then you should be the change that you want to see. And that's something that I always preach and give out to people, because, you know, yes, the White House is super far from a lot of people. The divide is real. Most of us will never interact even with our U.S. senator, maybe our governor. And so what you should do to make your impact and your, you know, microcosm of a community, you know, is different for each and every one of you. And so that is what I challenge people to do. Find something where you can say, you made this happen, even if it was just one or two people. It was change that you could see, it was viable, it was tangible, you could touch it. And so that will get rid of the entire rhetoric about, oh, my vote doesn't matter, and this, then the third.
Brother Losing Court, we got about 30 seconds before we bring General President Ward back up. Sir, what do you think are how would you answer that question, sir, about the impediments that we face beyond voting?
I will say, yeah, the biggest thing is about an information gap. The political process is very complex. There's a lot of bureaucracy, so it can be daunting. And I know to a lot of young folks that aren't necessarily tapped into politics can have a sense of not feeling hopeful or optimistic. So I think for our community specifically, we need to be really big on community and political engagement, educating our folks on what the political process is like and how we can get involved. Because to be quite frank, there are a lot of simple steps that we can take, such as phone banking or leaflets or just going to the office in person. There's a lot of small strategies that we can practice. And if we can help break down the political education and let it become more accessible and digestible, we can definitely convince people to tap in and to make the changes that we really deserve for our communities.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, the pleasure was all mine tonight, frats. Your futures are bright. Individually, the future of the fraternity is bright. I appreciate everything you all said. One final note, brothers, get out and send those votes in. No, don't send those votes in. Go drop those votes off. And that being said, it's my pleasure to hand the floor back over to our General President, Brother Dr. Everett Ward. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Brother Dr. Shelton. Brothers, thank you, Brother Wilson, Brother Jones, Brother Listen Court. Thank you for your scholarship throughout this entire presentation. I thought of that those words that bring us all together: scholarship, leadership, and service. And I heard you discuss the importance of some key components: research the issues, educate the community, have a significant impact on public policy, and engage public officials, know their voting record, and understand what their agendas are. And I was so pleased to just see how all of you are so involved in organizing at the community level and your engagement. And then I heard the words of authentic and relevant conversation about issues that are so important. But I want to thank you, brothers, for an exceptional evening and reminding us how important it is for all of us to go out and vote on November the 3rd. Your generation, without a doubt, and you stated it so often. You mentioned the name of Brother Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. And when you talked about judicial appointments, I could only think about Brother Thurgood Marshall. I could only think about Brother Charles Hamilton Houston, who served as Dean of Howard University's Law School. But what gave me the greatest joy tonight as I listened intently to each one of you was the intellectual depth, the sincerity that each one of you bring and what you represent, not only for the future of this nation, but I would suggest to you the future of the world, but more importantly, the future of our fraternity. And the way that you completely deconstructed the conversation between political propaganda and choosing entertainers that are conveniently relevant to your message versus choosing the intellectuals and the scholars who can give real depth and real evaluation and structure to the issues impacting our community, I found most rewarding. And I want to commend each one of you and say that this night, not only tonight, but we're looking at the Du Bois of this generation. We're looking at the Charles Hamilton Houston of this generation. We're looking at the Randall Woodfins of this generation. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. Keep up the great work. And as we always say, continue to move onward and upward in this great fraternity. And this great litigator, on to law school. And Brother Wilson, you keep being that outstanding student trustee, because one day you shall be president of Hampton University. And Brother Jones, keep that investment going, because I see you as a major investor and a philanthropic person like our good brother, Dr. William Bill Picard, who is a successful businessman and philanthropist in this nation. So each one of you represent the highest and the highest attributes that define our great fraternity. Thank you for this evening. And I tell you, my heart rejoices because I know who's in charge. And that's the three of you and the generation that you represent. And Brother Shelton, thank you, my brother, for all that you do as the intellectual that keeps us going. You're our John Hope Franklin, and we want to keep it going, my brother. Thank you so much. Now we'll turn over to our executive director, Brother Paul.
Yes, indeed, Brother General President. What a great conversation, huh?
Oh, outstanding, outstanding. Right. And please let me also thank our assistant vice presidents, our assistant regional vice presidents for their leadership that they give on a day-to-day basis as they help us guide this fraternity. But this was an exceptional evening.
Indeed, our future is indeed bright, my brothers. Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. Give us the ballot, and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights. Give us the ballot, and we will no longer plead to the federal government for passage of laws that prove Black Lives Matter. Give us the ballot, and we will fill our legislative halls with men and women of goodwill. Give us the ballot, and we will place judges on the benches who will do justly and love mercy. Give us the ballot, and we will quietly and nonviolently, without rancor or bitterness, implement laws that are fair for all Americans. Give us the ballot. Give us the ballot. Give us the ballot is a 1957 speech by our dear brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On Election Day, we expect you to go out and get your ballot. We expect you to exercise your right to vote. Your vote is your voice. If you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Our future belongs to those who vote. So brothers, friends, thank you so much for joining our conversation. I'm Joe Paul, and I proudly serve the greatest fraternity in the whole wide world as the Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer. And special shout out to our college brothers, our AVPs, as the Brother General President said, our future is indeed bright. Thank you so much for joining us, and vote.